fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, Mr. Joe Goldberg, Smoker Joe.
I am dying to do something outside.
Why?
Everything's ready to go. I just want to cook. It's clears the mind.
Wow.
Cooking dead animal.
Well, you're going to have to do a lot of cooking to clear that mind.
That's true. Yeah, give me a side of beef, light me up.
You'll be cooking for a week, I'll tell you. There will be no stop. We've got a great writer with us. He's returning, and he's going to talk about his newest book, Into the Gray Zone, and we're talking with Brad Taylor. So thank you very much for taking the time, Brad.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, this is great. You know, I quite surprised. You sure do quite the road trip, eh? You see a lot of people and do a lot of traveling, sign a lot of books and stuff. Is it still fun for you?
Yeah, it definitely is, because it's like Forrest Gump. Life's a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So we usually go to a new spot, every tour. I go to some standbys, like I'm from Houston, so I always go to Murdered by the Book. But we always go to new spots. Like today, I'm in Coronado, California, and I've been to Coronado before, but not with this specific bookstore. So.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well. Oh yeah. You're getting interviewed by Matt Coyle there, aren't you?
Yeah, I am.
Oh yeah. Be careful.
Yeah.
Don't turn your back on it.
Okay. Make sure you have your hand on your wallet.
Yeah.
And you keep your watch on.
Just letting you know ahead of time. Okay. Wow. So listen, book 19. Wow. So what do you got Pike doing in book 19? Yeah,
so this one, usually there's some kind of story that pops in my head. I'm reading the news and I see it, and this one happened to be about a year ago. A Sikh inside Canada was killed by a drive-by shooting. Wasn't a big deal. The Sikhs, they have more Sikhs in Canada as a diaspora than they do anywhere except for India. And then about 2 months after he was killed, the Canadian government came out and said, hey, the Prime Minister of India and the RAW, the Research and Analysis Wing, which is their version of the CIA, we have the Central Intelligence Agency, and they have the Research and Analysis Wing. The Prime Minister and the RAW assassinated this guy. And I was like, what? That makes absolutely no sense at all. What, democracy came into another democracy and assassinated something? That's what you hear with Putin doing, or Iran or North Korea, but not India. But then I thought, the Canadian government, there's no way they would come out and accuse India unless they had some serious, solid evidence. Well, then about 2 months after that, our own FBI arrested a guy in the United States and said, hey, this guy was sent here to assassinate a Sikh, and the Prime Minister and the RAW are the ones that sent him over here. And that was enough, and I was like, holy moly, there's something going on here. So I started doing research. I didn't know anything about India or the Sikh religion or anything like that, but that's what drove me to use India for this book.
Wow. I grew up with it, so I'm Canadian. So that's okay. Well, yeah, there's a lot to learn there with Sikhs. Wow. So how do you attack something like that in a book like this when it's something so relevant? Like, do you find it difficult to not take a side, so to speak?
No, not really. I try to look at it as if I was an alien just studying a bunch of ants on the floor. I don't have a dog in this fight. What am I seeing? And that's actually a good question, because number one, I don't want to paint the Sikh religion as, a bunch of fanatics, because it's a huge religion. They just have some Sikh separatists that are doing their stuff. But number two, the antagonists of the book, the Sikh, they're separatists, want their own state. They're not Dr. Evil. They're the hero of their story. They think they're the good guys. And I try to capture that on the page so you can see the motivations, understand where these guys are coming from.
Yeah, I think that's the difficult thing, because what I was going to say is, when you're writing a book like this, and I'm kind of just going to guess that the majority of your audience will be American, a lot of Americans won't really be aware as much of the Sikh religion and what's going on in India compared to with Canada, right? It's going to be all new. So you kind of have to explain it to them too, in a way, without getting an information dump.
Yeah, definitely. And it comes out as these guys are coming along. Now, these guys are Sikhs to begin with. They're just kind of normal Sikhs. And they get driven into conducting terrorist acts because of what's happened to them. And you try to show that on the page with sprinkles of history in there. I mean, that history for myself was kind of fascinating because the Sikh separatists, the specific Sikh separatists, the Khalistan Commando Forces, they call themselves, they want their own country, and they call it Khalistan, which doesn't exist right now. But in the late 80s, early 90s, they were the India's version of Al-Qaeda. I mean, everybody knew who they were. They were blowing people up, killing people left and right. In fact, in Canada, they blew up an airliner and killed everybody on board. And Indira Gandhi, who was the prime minister at the time, decided to wipe them out. And she did something called Operation Blue Star, where she stormed a Sikh temple where they were all held up in the temple, the actual fighters with guns and everything. But in so doing, she just unleashed the military, and they ended up killing anywhere from 500 to 1,000 Sikhs, just wholesale slaughter. Which obviously now you had normal Sikhs who were like, holy moly, maybe these Khalistan Commando Force guys are right. Maybe they are out to get us. And then 4 months after that happened, her bodyguards were Sikhs in India as a prime minister, and they turned around and assassinated her. So it's got a real a sensitive issue inside India. It's to this day. As a matter of fact, 2 days before I started my tour in Sacramento, California, the FBI arrested a Sikh separatist who had just thrown a bunch of hand grenades inside India and then fled to the United States, and we got him. So it's still bubbling over there, and you've got to, you want to explain that on the page without explaining it on the page. You don't want to start the book off with a PowerPoint. Here's some history you need to read.
Well, Brethren, how do you know? People know Pike, so how do you use Pike to tell that story or give that history to? How does he get educated on this? He can't know everything.
Well, yeah, but see, in the story, the main focus of the story is the gray zone warfare between China and the United States. And the Sikh separatists are a key component of that, but they're operating outside the scope of what China envisions. China's trying to use them for its own purposes, and they kind of go in their own way. So in Pike's case, he doesn't really care what motivates who and why. He wants to stop the threat. He's looking more at the threat than, if there's a bomb about to go off in the parking lot, he's the guy that says, I need to defuse a bomb, not what were the motivations behind placing this bomb. He just wants to defuse a bomb.
It's just a crazy story. So now, when you do something like this, do you find yourself having to address this when you're out in the book signings and you're seeing people and other writers and readers and stuff like that? Do people ever question you about where you get your ideas from and how this gets into a book?
Oh yeah, certainly. So that's it's probably one of the main questions I get. Like, why did you go to India? And I just explained to you why I went to India. But other books, I wrote the Polaris Protocol was about the drug cartels. So obviously I'm going to go to Mexico. But sometimes my wife wanted to go to Ireland. I'm like, okay, I'll create a book out of Ireland. Let's see what's going on over there with the IRA nowadays. And I wrote No Fortunate Son that way. In this case, I actually traveled to India for the research, and I still didn't even have a plot, which is probably the first time that's ever happened.
Wow.
I knew the Sikh separatists were going to be a part of it. I knew I wanted to do China, but I didn't have a threat vector really of why would China be doing what they're doing. And while I was over in India, I discovered that the Indians have discovered a huge deposit of rare earth elements, which I know all about. I was thinking about using that as a threat vector a few books ago. And so I said, okay, that's what I'm going to go with, because rare earth elements, just for the audience, they're used in everything that we use in modern day technology. They're not really rare. They're just incredibly hard to get out of the ground and refine. And so that when you do it, it's incredibly messy. It's an ecological disaster every time you do one of these mines. And because of that, we don't have our own rare earth element mine here in the United States. We close them all down because they're not profitable. Nobody can make a profit doing it. It has to almost be a state doing it. And China now, because of that, has an 80% monopoly on all rare earth element extraction and refinement. 80% of it comes from China. Now, when I say rare earth elements, basically that's anything that's technologically advanced. So your cell phones, if it has a screen or a battery, it's using rare earth elements. Cell phones, flat screens, electric cars, silicon, computers, everything. And so for our national defense, it's a pretty hard Achilles heel. When you talk about hypersonic weapons, the F-35 fighter, the helmet on the F-35 the pilot wears, everybody brags about how it costs $400,000 and it's molded to the pilot's head and gives you 360-degree views and all this fancy stuff. Well, they ought to call it a rare earth element helmet because you're not building that thing without rare earth elements. And you can see it happening right now in the trade war. The tariffs were going against China. China has tariffs against us. Well, one of the things they did was simply say, we're not going to export rare earth elements to the United States. And that's caused the Pentagon to sit up and notice because we need it.
So let me ask you a question about the Pike as a character, because that's, people like him. They may not be able to remember book 4's plot, but they remember your guys. And I'm wondering, how do you move him through time to book 19? How does he change? What happens to him that's not different than book 16?
Yeah, well, there's two components to this. There's one, this is the hardest thing to deal with. I mean, when I wrote my first book, I didn't even think I was going to be a writer. I certainly didn't think I'd be writing book 19. So I'd like to sit there and say, I mapped it all out. In book 5, I'm going to do this. In book 12, I'm doing that, which it wasn't the case. I give 100% to each individual book, and then I live with the repercussions of what I did in book A when I'm starting to write book B, because it's a sequential thing, and whatever happened in book A is going to have to be reflected in book B. But the main thing is you want the character to grow, and not necessarily in a good way, but, just human beings, as they live, you grow. You go to college, you change. You get married, you change. In my case, you go in the Army, you go to combat, you change. And I had to show that growth with Pike throughout the series of how he is adjusting to. When he first started, he had a completely broken moral compass. And he's slowly but surely getting that back, and it's in fits and starts, and he's shown his growth through that. Now, on the other side of that, I also had the problem of, people also age. Everybody gets old. And I was on book 4. I was like, God almighty, how am I going to keep doing this? Because eventually, in the regular world, you'd get promoted, or you'd leave the team. Even in the Army, you'd go through promotion ranks. One of my favorite authors is Robert Crace, and he writes the Elvis Cole series. And I started reading that in college. And when he was initially on the Monkey's Raincoat, he was a Vietnam veteran. And now, of course, if he was actually solving crimes, he'd be running around in a wheelchair. And so I asked Robert Crace, how'd you handle that? What'd you do? And he gave me the best advice I've ever had. He said, I'm going to treat him like Superman. The world will continue advancing forward. And, I used phone books in the earlier books, and I don't use them anymore because the phone books disappeared, but Elvis Cole will always be the same age. And I said, okay, that's what I'm doing. So that's what I do with Pike. I never mention his age anymore or anything like that, because I didn't want to get into the trap of writing him out, like Daniel Silva's character. He's in charge of everything, and now he's kind of worked himself out of a job.
So when you're writing these books, when you write this and you're dealing with such, terrorism and thrillers and really topical subjects and stuff like that, are you thinking about the reader as you write them in the fact of wanting to do something for them? Like, do you want Americans to think something differently about the world today?
No, I don't ever have any kind of agenda when I write the book. I do want to write realistically. I do want to make sure that what I'm capturing is accurate and it reflects the real world. But that's what I'm writing for, to be honest with you. I'm a reader before I'm a writer, and I've never tried to figure out what the market wants or which way the market's going. I mean, if I did, I'd be writing about vampires right now. But I just sit there and say, okay, what would I like to read? And if I like it, maybe they'll like it. And so far, that's worked.
Hey, Brad, can you tell me about your destination research? Because a lot of us now, can't afford to go to India or to other times. We Google Map it, Google Earth it, just do a lot of that stuff. And you're going. How does that make the setting itself a character inside your book and give it the flavor and visualization for you?
Yeah, I absolutely have to get on the ground. I wish I could write just using Google Earth, but every culture is different. Every setting is different. Every country is different. And usually what I say is there's 50% I'm looking for when I go there, when I go overseas, and there's 50% looking for me that I don't even know exist. In this case, for instance, if I was going to write Pike's always doing dismounted surveillance, and he's tracking the target, and he's going to, set up an ambush to get the guy, do a hit on him. And so I would assume that Mumbai would be like New York City, a real eclectic place with all kinds of races, creeds, religions running around because it's a cosmopolitan city in Mumbai. And I found out within about an hour being on the ground, that is not the case. I stood out like a sore thumb. I was the only gringo everywhere I went. And every time I walked into a place, it was like a record scratch. Everybody looking at me. What's that guy doing here? And they were very friendly. Don't get me wrong. They would all walk up to you and they wanted to practice their English. My wife was with me. There were more people wanting to get selfies with my wife everywhere we went, just because they had not seen a gringo before, or it was uncommon, especially in Goa and Jaipur and those places. And so if I hadn't gone there, I'd have written a scene that anybody who'd been to India would have said, that ain't happening. There's no way. They'd have spotted him a mile away. So it's things like that I have to. Well, another example is they had a big terrorist attack in 2008. You might remember the Mumbai hotel attacks where they hit the Taj Palace and the Oberoi hotels in Mumbai and killed over 200 people. Well, because of that, I wanted to see what security on the ground is like. Because Pike's going to be running around with a gun. He's going to have to go in and out. Now, if I just wrote it from Google Earth, like the United States, you can go into any hotel. You can go into restaurants. You can go anywhere in the United States unless it's an airport. Train stations, everything else, there's no security there. Well, in Mumbai, in the outlying areas, in like New Delhi, everything has a magnometer. Everything is a metal detector. If you're going to the ferry, you're going to the train station, you're going to the metro, you're going to a museum, you're going to every hotel, there's a magnometer there, and there's a guy sitting there checking when you go through. And I wouldn't have known that unless I went over there. And that's obviously going to affect the realism of my book, because I could say, Pike took his long guns and short guns right through the hotel lobby in a suitcase and then got ready to go to war. And anybody who'd been there would say, well, he ain't doing that because they're X-raying that bag.
Did it help you with dialogue, being on the ground?
Yeah. So, well, more so than dialogue, believe it or not, it's names.
Yeah.
They have casts in India, and each cast has a specific name, and you want to get that right. And so when I'd go to a restaurant, and the waiter would come over, I'd write his name down and say, if you don't mind me asking, I know casts aren't that big a thing anymore, but the naming convention comes from a caste. What's your last name and what caste are you? And they would be more than willing to tell you. They talk to you all day long about it. They give you an education on how this works in Indian society now, because then I'm going to use the names and pick a caste, and I want it to be accurate. And that's some of the hardest things, is just getting a naming convention correct when you're doing foreign countries. I wrote a book with the setting was in Bosnia, and I wanted a Bosniak, which is a Muslim from Bosnia. And I knew they'd have a certain name, and I didn't get a chance to ask anybody, so I was doing research online, and I found a Muslim wedding invitation, and it had all the names on it. And so I was like, yeah, perfect. And so I used that name, one of the names I just picked out. And I got an email from somebody in Bosnia who said, that's a Serbian name. No Bosniak would be named that. I'm like, damn it. I did my best. It was a Bosniak wedding. How did I know they were going to invite a Serb?
Wah.
Yeah.
What surprised you most about India when you were there?
I think the biggest surprise of what I just said was I've been to the station in Japan, which is a pretty homogenous country, Thailand, that kind of thing, but it's really homogenous, especially in the outer areas. Like in Goa, we went all through Goa, which is their resort area. And they used to have a whole bunch of Russians that went down there, which is something else I wouldn't have known unless I was on the ground. The Russians used to go there for vacation, so much so that we went and checked out a hotel. I'm staying in a nice hotel because I'm not going to stay in a dump. But my characters are going to stay in a dump because they're out running from the law. So I went to Tito's Lane, which is a really seedy area of Baga, and found a hotel and went into it. And they let me check the rooms out and everything. And on the wall, it had the 10 list, the 10 rules of the road, basically, for the hotel. And one of the plaques was in Cyrillic, and one of them was in English. And first thing I said was, why is there a Cyrillic plaque here? And he said, well, we used to get a lot of Russians. I was like, oop, make a note, write that one down. And the second one, the rule number 10 said, please do not bring any prostitutes or drug dealers in unless they have a room. And I was like, wow, this is a great hotel. So those are the kind of things I pick up just by being on the ground that you never would pick up just by looking at a street view.
Yeah, you'll pick up all the dislikes or the issues they have within the country, right, or within the city, and what they complain about. You'll hear what it's like there. So that's it. And I guess you incorporate that into your characters as well. Yeah,
most definitely. And you really want to get it accurate. And I've already gotten an email from India because I screwed up one thing. It was just a throwaway line. It wasn't a scene. It didn't get expanded on. But in one sentence, a guy says, I'm starving. That beef curry didn't do me well. And I get an email. They don't eat beef in India. And I knew that. I knew that the cow was holy and all that. I just was typing it out and didn't think about it. And boom, you get an email. That book's been out a week, and I got one from India saying you screwed this up. Yeah. So that's what you really want to focus on all that. So otherwise, you get 1,000 emails.
Yeah, should have let me read it. I would have told you.
You got the weapons right, but you missed the beef.
Yeah, well, not only me, I missed it. My wife missed it. My editor missed it. Come on, somebody should have caught that.
Yeah, I would have caught it right away. That's just, Well,
you might not have because it was just a throwaway line. Now, if they had sat down and served beef curry and showed him eating it, it's in the middle of a dialogue of them just talking, and he just throws that out because he's hungry. It had nothing to do with the plot, and he caught it.
Yeah. Well, that's all it takes. now that it's done, what do you think it's done for your character?
He's got well, I don't want to give away any spoilers. I'll just say he's still growing, put it that way.
He didn't die at the end?
And Jennifer is as well. So they were kind of a 50-50 team. My publisher calls it, the Pike Logan thrillers, but they're really Pike and Jennifer thrillers. So she's doing her own growth.
Right. Well, how do you determine the relationship between them? Yeah,
it's gone from the very book to 19. I mean, they're now married. That's part of the process of them going along, and they're partners in their own company, a cover organization for the Taskforce, and that's all evolved. It didn't start out like that.
So I guess you've been doing this all by ear, and you don't know where you're going to go with it. How many more you're going to have, and where it's going to end up?
No, I don't. I don't plan that. I mean, I'm writing the next book now, book 20, and that's based in Argentina. We just got back from there. And so I'm just writing. I give 100% to that one book, and when I'm done with that, I'll think about the next one.
All right, Brad, I don't usually ask these kind of questions, but I'm stuck, so I want to ask you. This is for me. Your openings are great. How do you plan out or step out? What criteria do you have for opening up your books?
That's probably the hardest thing for me, anyway, to do.
Yep.
Because I have it in my head of what the opening is going to be generally. I'm going to have the scene. I'm going to start the book, for instance, in this case, I'm going to start the book with the antagonist. That's easy to say. Now it's like, okay, what does that mean? How are you going to literally type on the page? What words are you going to use? And so what I really like doing is, at least for the first five pages, I always keep in my head, I want the reader to turn the page. So by page 5, then you can start talking about Sikh separatism and you sprinkling that in and gradually showing motivation. But right off the bat, all I want is a reader to go, what in the world's going on here? I got to find out.
Oh. We have to ask, what does Brad Taylor do on his days off? What's a day like for Brad Taylor when he's not traveling to all these exotic locations and writing these books?
I do a lot of shooting. So my day off will be either on the pistol range or the rifle range.
Weapons.
Yeah.
Right.
I build guns and I shoot guns. So.
Wow.
That's what I do.
Yeah. It's something you've done a long time.
No, I mean, when I was in the military, I was, in special forces. I had every gun I ever wanted was handed to me. It wasn't until I got out of the military. And then about 4 years after I was out, I was already writing books. And I was like, you know what? I kind of miss shooting. So as a civilian, I got into it, which is a whole different world. Because now, in the Army, I just go to the range and shoot. Now I got to find a range. And now I got to find what weapon systems I want. And then I start building it. As soon as I get done with one, I'm like, I don't like that anymore. So I'll build another one.
And you incorporate that into the books?
Yeah, there's a bunch of them in there. Like this book's got staccato pistols. I shoot those, and I like them, so I put them in there. Before that, it was Zevtech pistols, and I like that. I had them in there, but then I changed to staccato.
Let me ask you a question about. I got to ask the process questions. I'm in the editing process right now. Again, as everybody knows, Rev 5. Antagonists. Tell me about how you build out your antagonists. What's in their mind? Yeah, I know, but I want to get more.
He wants detail.
I really want to know. I want the reader to understand the motivations. I mean, I've interrogated real world terrorists, and you're kind of surprised when you sit across from them and they're cracking jokes, and you're talking to him, and he's smiling, and you're like, why in the hell does this guy want to kill everybody? I have never met a Dr. Evil twirling his mustache, and so I think it's a disservice to create a character that's like that, that's just inherently evil. So my antagonists are always, whether it's just some antagonists are just driven by money. I've written that before too. He's not out to kill anybody because he just is a serial killer. He's out to kill anybody because he wants this money. And if that guy's going to stand in the way of getting the money, then he values life less than an ordinary human, and he'll take the life. But I want that to be known on the page. I want the reader to understand this is the reason this guy is doing this. And that'll affect how that book travels. So if you're ideological and you really are Khalistan Commando Force guy who believes that the death he's causing, while it may be evil to him in his heart, it's going to bring about a greater good. That's different than a guy who says, I'm going to make $10 to take this guy out. And then if the risk gets too high, he's going to say, that $10 ain't worth it. The motivations are completely different for those two guys. And so I try to show that on the page.
Are there things that you try to avoid? I got to ask this question last night at a group I was speaking at. Are there things inside the book as you're writing that you go, no, I'm just not going to do that? Or I got to do that no matter what happens, like beef curry. But
no, there's not anything that I mean, I will say, the things I won't ever do are just gratuitous violence. I mean, I write about violent things. Warfare is violent in and of itself. And I don't set scenes up where it's just like, I'm going to really describe how this guy got eviscerated. I don't do that, the gratuitous violence. I also don't do sex. Because, not that I have anything against it, I just think I'd be a laughing stock if I tried to do it. So I just stay away from it.
Yeah. What about language?
Yeah, now, that's a problem I've had, and I've evolved as a writer. So I have what I call the fuck factor, where I'll write my whole book, because as an Army guy, I mean, we cuss all the time. Cuss. In normal conversation, you're just cussing. You're not mad, you just cuss. And so when I'm writing a dialogue for an Army person or a Pike or any of the team, I write how we would speak. And I found out that is not how the normal humans speak. And people got really upset with all the cuss words. So now I write it all out, and at the end of it, I do search and replace for fuck. If it belongs in there, if there's a genuine need for that kind of emotion to come across the page, I leave it. If it's just conversation where it's just because I'm a swear guy, I take it out.
Yeah, I had a situation with that. I started decreasing my use of cursing. I'll just use a generic word throughout the Spy Devil series, the last book. I actually got a note from a reader saying, "Thank you. You only used 3 of those words in the entire book. Thank you very much." I'm like, okay. I'm feeling a need for some person somewhere. Yeah, so I've gotten emails about they cuss too much, and at first I was like, well, you don't understand the military. That's how they talk. And then I was like, well, it doesn't make it right. If it doesn't enhance the book, there's no reason to have it. So I started taking it out. Yeah, I also consider it sort of lazy writing. If all else fails, just make somebody swear. If you can't think of the right words, things like that, then. Yeah, in the Army, we just swear. You just did it. I mean, when you're talking about your lunch meal, there'd be 3 curse words in there. It's just something we did, and I just had to break myself with the habit of that when I type it. Yeah, but you're still looking for reality, because you're going through the types of weapons, and you're going through the setting and the environment. You want to make it as accurate as possible, so you want to make it as accurate as possible on the dialogue side too, until you realize it's over. You go too far. Yeah, it's too much of it. So that's what I called it. The F factor. I go through the whole thing and just say, when I hit one, I'm like, does this deserve to be here? And about 99% of the time, it does not. And so I just take it out. But there's 1% of the time, that deserves to be there. Okay. Well, listen. Let's talk about how you like to have readers get a hold of you and get around. So you do a website, you do social media. What's your favorite way for them to contact you? Yeah, so I do it all. So all of them are Brad Taylor Books. So my website is bradtaylorbooks.com. They can go to that, and there's actually excerpts of this book, not only this book, but they can get excerpts of any of the books I've written to get a flavor for what the story's about. I'm on Instagram, Brad Taylor Books. I'm on Facebook, Brad Taylor Books. Twitter, Brad Taylor Books. So Brad Taylor Books all the way around. BTB. Well, listen. Drop the needle. Yeah. Well, we appreciate you being here. And, of course, the book, everyone, Into the Gray Zone, and it's book 19 in the Pike Logan series, and it's Brad Taylor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks, Brad.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.